Back in 2010, right before the World Cup in South Africa kicked off, the world's best goalkeepers were lining up to speak to the press, and they were absolutely furious. Iker Casillas called the ball an absolute disaster. He later added, "It's a pity that in a competition as important as the World Cup, we have such a poor ball." Gianluigi Buffon was equally furious, stating, "I think it's shameful letting play such an important competition with a ball like this." The complaints didn't stop there. Brazil's number one, Júlio César, absolutely destroyed the ball's reputation, saying, "It's horrible, terrible. It's a ball you can buy in the supermarket." But how was that even possible? Adidas, the world's biggest sports brand, had spent millions of dollars testing what they called the most flawless, smooth football in history, using wind tunnels and robotic legs. Its name was Jabulani. According to the engineers, this ball was a technological marvel, designed to fly through the air with zero aerodynamic drag. But there was one major thing they forgot: the laws of physics. This perfect ball had fallen victim to the brutal laws of fluid dynamics, turning it into the most hated football in history. But where did those billion-dollar labs go wrong? How could a perfectly smooth ball zigzag through the air like a UFO? Let's take a closer look at the fascinating physics behind the biggest engineering fail in football history. To solve this mystery, we first need to understand the anatomy of a football. For decades, the classic black and white balls we grew up watching were made of exactly 32 panels. When these panels were stitched together, they left deep seams and ridges across the ball's surface. Now, what does common sense tell us? The smoother something is, the cleaner and straighter it flies through the air, right? Wrong. At least, in the world of aerodynamics, that's not always how it works. When air hits a moving object, it flows around it. As a classic 32-panel ball flies, those deep seams trigger turbulence early on. In other words, they mix up the air. This turbulence shrinks the low-pressure zone, essentially a vacuum effect, that forms right behind the ball and pulls it backward. The result? The ball moves through the air in a much more stable and predictable path. And that's exactly where the tragedy of the Jabulani began. Adidas engineers slashed the number of panels from 32 to just 8. Instead of stitching them, they thermally bonded them together. The goal was to create a flawless sphere. The Jabulani became so smooth that as air flowed over it, it didn't trigger any turbulence. It just glided right off. But this created a massive wall of low pressure behind the ball. As it hurtled through the air, this unstable pocket of air began violently jerking the ball left, right, up, and down. In football, there's a shooting technique known as the knuckleball. The player strikes the ball in a way that gives it almost zero spin. Because the seams on a non-spinning ball hit the air asymmetrically, the ball suddenly changes direction mid-air. And that was the catch. With the Jabulani, every single standard shot turned into an accidental knuckleball. The ball would randomly swerve in mid-air, leaving goalkeepers with absolutely no way to predict its path. While a few geniuses like Diego Forlan figured out the ball's secrets and finished the tournament as top scorer, the goalkeepers were left completely helpless. When the 2010 World Cup ended, Adidas went back to the drawing board, following a massive wave of criticism from players. They finally accepted that you simply cannot argue with the laws of physics. For the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, they designed the Brazuca. It still had a low panel count, just 6 panels, but this time, the engineers did something incredibly clever. They increased the seam depth and added microscopic textures, or tiny pimples, to the surface. In other words, they intentionally made the ball rough. Today, if you look closely at all the high-tech balls used in modern tournaments, you'll see tiny grooves, lines, and textures. Every single one of them is designed to heal the scar left by the Jabulani and to finally tame the laws of fluid mechanics. The Jabulani showed us that sometimes, even the most perfect engineering designs can be completely ruined by a simple rule of nature and physics. When million-dollar labs overlook a tiny scientific detail, the world's best goalkeepers can end up looking like total amateurs.